It's episode 45 of the FinTech Mosh Pit, and we have none other than Mike Praeger, CEO and founder of AvidXchange. We've got none other than an amazing charlatan, one of our hometown heroes we all love, founder, CEO, AvidXchange, an amazing company, I might add. Mike Praeger, thank you so much for making the time to join us, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tariq, and always happy to spend time with you. And certainly, on a Friday in the middle of, the shelter at home type environment, always makes kind of a unique experience. So, excited to see another familiar face.
Absolutely. And that resonates more than you know. I'll tell you, you were one of the first couple guests on this FinTech Mosh Pit, probably 2 years ago. Who knows, man, it feels like a different universe there. And under that mindset, I just kind of want to start the first question. We usually try to start on the social good, the social impact. AvidXchange has done a lot of stuff recently in these tough times. A Child's Place and the Second Harvest Food Bank stuff and the association and partnership there. One that I love, E2D, that digital divide is so critical. You guys leaned in there in a partnership to make sure those refurbished laptops were there. Your Lowe's home improvement partnership and Urban League, and She Built This City, the 400 pieces and more of PPE that your folks are giving. I would normally start by just saying, why are you doing that? And why are you spending so much time and leaning in? But I know you well enough to know you're an emotional guy. You wear your heart on your sleeve. Your employees say it. Everyone who knows you say it. Let me just ask, this is one of the most trying times that we've been through as a city, as a community, as leaders. What does all of that mean to you when you see the pain and the need? And why are you leaning in so hard?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot packed into, kind of what you just, outlined. And, at the heart of it, I think, part of, our role, here at AvidXchange and being kind of, one of the tech leaders in the city, and my role as the leader is to, maybe bring a sense of, optimism and, positive energy to, everything that's going around us, right? All of us have been impacted one way or another, through the virus, whether it be, from a, health perspective, knowing somebody that has a health issue, related to the virus, to, people that are impacted by the economy. Our favorite restaurants aren't there anymore. Our favorite barbers, aren't there anymore. In preparation for this, I actually shaved, this morning, first time in about 2 weeks. I said, I better clean myself up to come on Tariq's program. And, I think one of the things that, I'm a big believer in is the city of Charlotte is, such a positive city overall, and the people are just, relentless and resilient, in terms of, kind of weather battling past hurricanes, whatever it may be. And this is going to be another one of those. It will too, be another side, and it will, we will emerge from it, and I believe stronger than ever before. And during this time frame, we just want to try to provide, a positive influence. There's so much negativity, in the news and, on the internet, everywhere you turn. You can't really get away from it. And how do we provide, kind of that positive outlook, not only for our team members at AvidXchange, but also for, the city.
Is that I think that's well said. And I think there's a lot of leaders. That's a defining characteristic of Charlotte's leaders that have stepped up during this time. It's that the city needs positivity. The city needs something to believe in so we can move forward through these trying times. Are you feeling that inside though? Or because I've seen your emotions, they're raw and they're real. Like, how are you feeling inside when you just said to me before we started, this is your first day that you've actually come back into the office to kind of see how things are going to get going again, stuff like that. How are you feeling in here right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty eerie to walk into, our headquarters, and it feels like you're walking in on a Sunday morning and there's no one here, which I routinely do just to get work done, but I'm like, holy cow, this is the middle of a work day, and why is anyone here? And it's a pretty eerie feeling. But I would say, I think we're super optimistic about what's going to come out on the other side of this. And I think we're one of the things that we have implemented to kind of reinforce that kind of positive vibe in the business is we instituted what we used to do is have a regular rhythm around our executive team meeting once a week. Every Monday's kind of our team day, and we've now moved that to 7:30 every morning. Our executive team huddles for 30, 45 minutes, talks about kind of key things that happened the day before, things that we have to make sure that we address or implement during the day ahead. And then that's followed up by we end every day with a town hall meeting of all 1,500 team members, and we call it our 445 huddle. And we talk specifically about the wins of the day and what happened across the entire business, all functional groups in terms of key wins we had. And we have a different person host it. I usually do one, typically about one a week, but we rotate around other executive team members, other leaders from other, we have 7 offices around the country, to host it and to kind of provide that real life experience in terms of what other leaders are experiencing. There's a human element around how's it impacted each of us as leaders. People love seeing the home office setups that different people have throughout the country, which is always a little bit entertaining. And then the kind of last thing we did just to kind of gonna keep it fun is we instituted a song of the day, and it comes out at 11:55 every day, and it's usually the most talked about thing over lunchtime, and a little blurb about the person that's selected and kind of why they did it. But I think we're doing all those things in the spirit of how we're staying connected, evangelizing the positive things that are happening within our business, which also then translates to some of the things we're doing in the community. The last thing I'd say is one of the things that is core to our fabric and our DNA, as we call it, AvidXchange, is supporting the communities that we work, live, play in, and not only here in Charlotte, but also in the 6 other cities around the country that we have our offices in. And our Avid Foundation is a key piece of that. And one of the things that kind of happened at the beginning was all the work we were doing in the foundation kind of came to a screeching halt when we went to the work from home, and we're like, well, we can't volunteer anymore. We can't do some of these things, and quickly. One of our leaders that joined AvidXchange, I think well, Rob Focus, in the last, he joined Avid in the last 6 months. And Rob, one of his missions is to, as the leader of the Avid Foundation. And I tasked Rob, I said, just because we're, in the shelter at home and, people, can't do the regular types of, foundation related work that we're accustomed to doing, let's be creative and let's figure out what we can do to support the community, in the current environment. And, and that related to certainly the work we're doing with E2D, and, and then because of the schools being closed, E2D got kicked out of, all the labs they have. And we're like, what can we do? So, we, quickly pivoted and gave them office space, here at our, headquartered facilities at the Music Factory. As one example, to then, the work with, actually, getting the 3D printers and having teammates actually make, protective equipment for our emergency folks from, with them at their homes. And in a very short period, we had over 400 protective devices that we made to provide to our emergency personnel.
That's amazing. So I love, and hopefully there's some good lessons learned for our viewers out there who are struggling with many of the same things, hearing all you're doing for employee morale, obviously, and keeping that up in these tough times. Mental health issues are rampant right now, also paired with leaning in on the charitable front, making sure that's taken care of. One other front before we move on to the market and the business, I've seen it. I heard you earlier tell me you've seen as well. I've seen more info sharing and collaborating across the city of folks trying to figure out as we transition back into work. What does
Yeah.
that look like? What's going to change? I was with the Carolina FinTech Hub board yesterday, and they wanted to spend the first portion of the meeting talking between banks and tech companies and professional services companies saying, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? How's it going? It was a great information share. And I heard some things that literally made me realize things are going to be different, whether it was anticipating buildings' physical capacities being more at 50
Yeah.
or even 30%, or a rush on cubes and high-walled cubes again. I mean, it seems like we're going back to the future a bit, but the day calls for it. What are you seeing internally and planning for? And what are you hearing in that information share about what your employees really want to know, which is what are they going to be coming back to? What is it going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, so I think first of all, it was well said in terms of I think one of the characteristics of Charlotte is that the business leaders are very open and very collaborative, and we're seeing that in the current environment. I'm involved in a number of CEO peer groups, whether it be some of the groups that Dina Diori has put together to, just picking up the phone and calling Doug Lubden, Rick Elias, and, sharing about, collaborating about, what they're seeing, how they're planning it. And so I think, everybody speaks super collaborative. There is no really right or wrong answer in a lot of this. And I think, the common theme that we're, hearing that we're going to, prescribe to is, is to go slow, do it in phases. We're going to start, by having, that volunteer, group. And, I think one of the things that is, kind of a fine line is, the health of the employees. And when I say fine line is there's the kind of, impact of the virus, the direct impact of the virus. That's obviously we need to protect our teammates on. But along with that, there's this mental health impact of that people are suffering from being sheltered at home. And we have, not quite sure how many yet, but a good population of people that desperately want to come back to the office for that, that mental health, component of it, and to feel like they're, kind of emerging, somewhat back to, normalcy. And I think, that's where the fine line is balancing those two. And so we're going to start by, phase one for us is going to be more of the volunteer aspect of it. Those that want to come back can. Those that feel more comfortable staying at home, they can do that as well. And then we'll slowly transition over time as we see the environment playing out. And obviously like everybody else, we're monitoring the daily the data on a daily basis to determine whether we're continue to make progress or if we're having any setbacks.
What's your mindset on working from home and the balancing of that and productivity? And then how has that evolved as now safety and this new normal of post-COVID world has come into play?
Yeah, so I say, first of all, I've been, just, really encouraged around, the productivity that our team has had. There was a handful of, groups within Avid that we, necessarily historically, didn't think that we would be able to transition to a work at home environment. Some of those on the technology side, as well as in our payment services operation. One of the, when we made the decision on Friday, March 13th, that we were going to transition for that Monday, the 16th, to work from home. At that point in time, we had, maybe about, 300-400 team members that, operated from desktops. And, we pulled in our chips with our friends at, Microsoft and Dell to, get an emergency order expedited for laptops for that team. And we started that week of the 16th with roughly 1,000 or 1,100 of our team members working from home. And by Thursday, we actually had all, 1,500 working at home. And so, what I would say is that, there's a lot of kind of, kind of learnings in that process. But I think, just like we were kind of fairly deliberate in terms of that transition, out of the workforce, we actually need to be more deliberate in terms of that transition back.
So if switching gears now to the next obviously logical big topic on your plate, the market, your strategy, where you're going. If all of this wasn't enough, right, to deal with, you guys are still kind of, the ink isn't even dry on the news of this $127.5 million raise, kind of that epic growth story of where you're headed. I guess just talk for a second about how that process has been. And I think a question on a lot of people's mind, we've read little tidbits. There's only so much that you can say at the level. We were debating it earlier this week. We're like, he's a startup mindset kind of guy. That's a startup company, but they're just getting to a size where like, it's just a different game. So we obviously understand that. Yeah. But with that being said, what are you going to do with the money? As we read about kind of certain angles of it, investments in existing businesses, no brainer. Where you're going is just off the charts. Opportunistic acquisitions, an interesting word that was thrown in there. I mean, can you just help us frame how all this is and what it's like and what you can tell us?
So first of all, I would say, when we, the 127.5 million that we announced last week was kind of an extension around that we closed in January. When we put together the planning construct for this round and for this capital, needless to say, COVID had, was nowhere on the radar, right? And so we feel fortunate that we actually were able to accomplish it, and get it closed a week ago from Monday in the current environment. But a little bit of kind of inside baseball, on the round is we completed the BankTel acquisition last October, and as part of that, in thinking about what our future looks like, and we think certainly being a public company at some point, over the next several years is probably a likely roadmap. And we said, hey, why don't we, now go out and replenish our balance sheet? We used a little over $100 million to, fund the BankTel acquisition off our balance sheet. Let's replenish our balance sheet and really provide, a little bit of, that, dry powder, to be opportunistic. So we created a benchmark that we wanted to, our target, we raised $250 million. And so we, as part of that, when we had our closing in January, we ended up closing at 260. So it was kind of oversubscribed by $10 million. But as part of that, we had, significant demand from other investors that we thought would be really great long-term investors, especially, to support, our longer-term strategic plan, potentially being a public company, those type of things. And that had, an interest in getting involved. And so, at the board, we decided, let's raise, an additional $100 million. And this was back in, kind of our, February, timeframe, just to really create that, war chest to be opportunistic, over the next couple of years, make, double down on some of the core investments in our business that already give us that competitive advantage to even make that moat bigger, combined with, we think there's going to be an interesting M&A environment. And then, that $100 million additional target actually was oversubscribed again, and that's where that grew to be 127.5. So we finally said, okay, let's cap it there. And now we have, this, a phenomenal balance sheet, and we're, and despite the current crisis that we're in, we're the best funded. Our balance sheet's as strong as it's been in our entire existence as a company, and we feel really fortunate to be just ready for kind of that next phase, and going to be really aggressive in terms of how we invest in the business, based on what we're seeing. And COVID's been a really interesting catalyst for our business, from the sense from the sense of companies have realized in their business continuity plans, you can't really pay your bills if you're in a paper check environment, because you're not like going to let AP personnel take pre-printed check stock home and and cut checks off their printers at home, right? It doesn't work that way. And so companies very quickly realize, if we're going to work from a true work home environment, we have to have an automated AP payables process that our team can execute in a cloud-based environment. And so that's been a massive catalyst for us, in terms of We set an all-time Q1 record in March. April, which closed yesterday, all-time record. To give you some context is our previous April record was in April 2018, and we almost tripled that record this month, this April. And so, so we're in the, kind of, one of the companies that, certainly benefiting from the current environment. At the same time, from, existing customers, we are seeing, volumes, maybe down in the 5-10% range, in terms of being eroded, which is, what we, kind of expected that would happen.
So, I mean, that's incredible. And just to hear that in this environment, I guess, there's still a lot of suffering, a lot of struggling, and clearly you're leaning in there. It makes me feel good because I feel like every conversation I have all day long is with businesses that are literally getting clobbered. They're innovating. It's fine. To see something that was set up, and I don't know if it's perfect timing and a plan that, like, all right, so you're going to strengthen it and take opportunistic moves with these tuck-in acquisitions or whatever it might be. Like, maybe that was a case of perfect timing, and now we're seeing in the market, in the acquisition market now, all of a sudden there's more opportunity to find those as people are distressed, but the innovation is still amazing. Your guy, Chris Elmore, was with me a couple of weeks ago, and he said a really great statement, which was, not in a good way, but just in a way, we're going to see companies and who was living paycheck to paycheck and the fundamentals of balance sheets and the fundamentals of cash flow. I guess, I mean, is it just a case of perfect timing for you as it relates to you're catapulting kind of some things that now are paying off that you were thinking about them at that moment?
Yeah, but I mean, certainly, as it relates to COVID, no one, could have forecasted that. And so we feel, super fortunate, is a little bit lucky, from that perspective. But one of the things, we made a decision back in February, to raise, based on the momentum we had, to take, add an additional 100 million, which ended up being the 127.5. Really the catalyst was, we think it's going to be a tougher economic environment going forward. Not sure whether it's going to be a recession or not, but certainly it's going to be slower growth.
But February was a very different time, even in the beginning, absolutely. But even people at the end of February who were really understanding, like, this is something for real and serious. The vast majority of people weren't there until March, and even late March in some cases, right?
Yeah, and so that decision in February, I mean, I'd love to say, hey, we saw what was going to happen with COVID. COVID wasn't even part of the discussion that we had in February. It was really about, more about, hey, if we have the demand, we think it's going to be in a tougher economic environment over the next couple of years, which means there's probably going to be more M&A opportunities, for companies. So let's bolster our balance sheet. And so, it was a little bit lucky as it relates to COVID.
So listen, I've got two more questions for you. All right. This first one's going to be a little out there, and maybe there's no answer to it, and that's fine, right? You strike me as someone who's just got, one, the passion and the inspiration is there, and it's inspiring to me to see. But two, you seem to have your foot on the pedal, and you seem to have it on there hard. And I see your signs. Think like a customer, you show, that stuff. Clearly that's your mantra. Clearly that foot on the pedal there. I was trying to piece some stuff together from our last interview 2 years ago in that very office. And what makes you that way? What is making you do this, driving that fire inside of you? And I was wondering, my favorite story you told me that time, and if anyone doesn't know it, they should go back and watch it, was your college experience where you needed money and you started painting, and then you got a couple guys on the crew with you, and it started growing, and all of a sudden it got a little big and it kind of started managing a little more. Then you landed like the university dorm contract.
Yeah.
You've got like hundreds of people working for you. It's the easy thing to look at when you hear that story is Mike Praeger touches anything, it turns to freaking gold. He's got this amazing touch. It was awesome. But the thing I was wondering, and I thought about this a lot afterwards, and now I'm wondering as I'm seeing you push this pedal down now, is did that influence you in some conscious or subconscious way to have a chip on your shoulder where you left you don't want to leave something on the table? You disbanded that company when you left. People weren't able to have those jobs anymore, and you lost value, the ability to pass something down, to make it grow. did that subconsciously, I mean, I'm sure I'm stretching here, but I just want to know, like, you said to me that was, I probably shouldn't have done that. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering now
Well,
you're,
that was yeah. And then, so that was a long time ago, and what I would say is that certainly, one of the things I can learn from that experience, which was in college, and the painting business I started in college, so I could stay in on the Georgetown area over the summer, was that that you are creating something of value and that can be kind of everlasting, if you can position the right way. And I think it just translates to AvidXchange, kind of that chip on our shoulder is really about this massive market opportunity that we have and the ability to really change an industry. That it's 2020, and how many industries can we have, can any company have a defining footprint on to say, hey, we're one of those leaders that actually eliminated the paper check from how businesses paid their bills, and showed businesses a better way, a more efficient way, to drive both, inefficiency, as well as cost out of their business process, and change an industry. And we have the ability to become, a really impactful, and a really big player in the landscape of B2B payments.
so it's the outcome that's driving you, the mission.
Absolutely.
I'm just wondering what drives you to keep your foot there. So it's the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that, I've learned is, and I was just kind of on a little circuit internally here at AvidXchange about evangelizing what I call the AvidXchange flywheel, what makes our business work, and kind of how our strategies relate to the different, kind of gears that we have in our flywheel, and really evangelizing the importance of innovation. And as we've gotten bigger, innovation becomes really hard because now, son, there's real risk involved if things don't work. And how do you keep that innovation? And, my term, and I kind of, stolen it from Jim Collins, is, we need to start by firing bullets, because if we're working to build cannonballs, one, we're not going to be very accurate when we actually have to fire it. And B, it's going to take us a long time to build. And how do we keep, as we get bigger, still at the mindset that we need to fire bullets until we have enough, learnings and enough customer experience to turn those into cannonballs. And that's really difficult to do, as you get to our stage, and even companies that are much bigger than us, is how do you keep that innovation lens? Because at the heart of it, that's what we need to fully take advantage of the market opportunity we have.
I have to steal every great anecdote and saying that I hear. So bullets and cannonballs, I'm going to take that. Final question for you. And this is a personal one. I think a lot of people are interested to hear personal kind of thoughts and impacts during this crazy new normal, all this time, everything we're coping with.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself through this process? What has surprised you? What is something that, maybe Mike Praeger of 3 months ago wouldn't have known that or been like that? Is it anything, or has it been pretty smooth as it relates to how you've coped with it?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd say it just, the resilience of our team, and how quickly we transitioned to, the work home environment, and the productivity that we had. I never would have thought that we would be as productive as we are in the work from home environment. So, that's going to have an everlasting impact in terms of, how do we think of, work from home policies going forward, to, designing, our headquarters and our office, and knowing that going forward, there's going to be, more and more people of our teammates that can actually be effective working at home. And maybe it means that our campus becomes more of a collaboration, center, more so than, we had been thinking in terms of, a work center that, yes, there's people that work here, but it's also one of the main focuses can be as a collaboration center for even those people that typically work at home to come together for those collaboration centers, or, exercises. And so I think there's a lot of those type of learnings, which we're, just at the early stages of recognizing. I would say, like everything else, one of the positives, that, that's come out of it is just, the connection with family. My son is a sophomore in college out at University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and the fact that and he was going to work in Tel Aviv this summer, and so we were literally he was planning to be home for 3 days in June after he wrapped up in his school at USC before going to Tel Aviv, and that was going to be our summer. He's going to spend 3 days, and now we've literally spent 2 months, and now it's going to end up being the whole summer here in Charlotte. So 3 days is going to end up being in 5 months of time, and that's a blessing, right? Because you don't get that time back, you don't get those years back, and just connecting from a family perspective. I think it's been a special time from that, and all the things that from watching Netflix to playing card games to having epic battles on the basketball court every night. It's just, those are great memories to have.
Man, I'm going to tell you, I think that's the note to leave it on. And I think no matter how terrible everything is in certain angles, there's always a silver lining. And perhaps as we look back on this troubling time, it will be that opportunity to all be together. Those who are lucky enough to be able to do that, that will be the silver lining. Mike Praeger, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with me, my friend.
Happy to participate anytime, Tariq. And you're doing great things for the city, evangelizing fintech and helping our city grow. So thanks for all you do, and be safe, everybody.
That's episode 45, folks. Mike Praeger, CEO and founder of AvidXchange, and we are out.